Hello YouTube, and this is my collection of 21 wristwatches. And today I've selected 7 of my watches from my entire collection. These are ones which are basically from the Orient, that meaning they are Japanese or Chinese or a mixture of both, which sounds a bit strange, but in fact, even many Swiss watches have up to 40% of their internal parts from China, so they're not entirely Swiss. But today it's a Orient selection, and I'd like to show you some different kind of watches. I wondered what else is out there, and of course, what do we use when we wonder what else is out there? We go to YouTube or we browse around on eBay. But if you want to inform yourself, YouTube is a great instrument for that. That's what I did. And I will put 2 or 3 selected connoisseurs of watches who I think are very good sites to inform yourselves about watches in the links below to help you in your own researches. But what I found when I looked, there was one particular brand called Orient, and there was one particular model called the Bambino, which is this one here, which everyone was saying you've got to have one of these. You know, these are just amazing quality and value for the money. So of course I took a look, and indeed they are very inexpensive. You can get an Orient automatic watch like this. This is automatic for about $130, and even depending on where you buy it, you might get a very low shipping rate or shipping for free. So that is very inexpensive for an automatic watch. And then of course everyone would say, well, you know, that's coming, I guess, from China, and what about the quality and everything? Well, I think we have to remember today that China is building very sophisticated instrumentation of all kinds, as well as putting people into space. They built my telescope, which I use for astronomy, and is very, very well made. And they're able to do this kind of exact fine mechanic with no problem. Of course, they've learned over the years copying other watches and gotten so good at that. I think they've got their own store of knowledge of how to make fine watches these days. Orient is a daughter company of Seiko. So you're partly looking at a kind of Japanese-owned Chinese producer. Now, Seiko and Orient have always acted independently, and Orient has been sort of, if you like, the less expensive model that you can buy, and they are very independent companies. Even Orient makes their own movements, internal mechanics, and doesn't just sort of take one of the lower end Seiko movements. They are a company of their own right, and today, in fact, Orient has been left a little bit for the so-called enthusiast market. So watch enthusiasts tend to know very much about Orient, and I think the general watch buying public know a lot less about it. So what is about this watch? What do you get for $130? It's basically a dress watch, so you cannot go swimming with this. It says 3 atmospheres or 30 meters water resistant. That just means splash resistant in watch talk. Anything below 100 meters, I wouldn't really chance it to go swimming with it, or something that's specifically a kind of diver watch. But this is, a wear it under normal condition type of dress watch. The movement is the so-called F6724 of Orient, which is one of their basic line movements, but it has been improved over the years. For example, now it's very easy to adjust the date. You you can basically adjust the time with hacking. So this watch I have had in the box a long time and I haven't wound it up, and I wind it up now and it's running already. And what it means is hacking is you can, if you take the armature out, the second hand stops, so you can more accurately to the second, if you like, adjust the time according to the pips on the radio or something. And earlier models didn't have that. If you take it halfway out, of course, then you can adjust the date, as you see, moving the date around there. So it basically has everything you would expect from a modern automatic watch. It's a very nice dial, I think, for me, very attractive. I even like the Orient logo, and this particular model doesn't have a glass back, but I think in recent years they have adjusted it that you can also have a glass back to this watch. And it comes with this leather strap. This is lacquered because one big market for them is in Asia, and I think they like to impregnate the leather quite heavily. So it's a little stiff. Genuine leather marking on a strap means it's let's say the base quality of leather. A lot of people complain and say, well, the strap isn't much good, you want to switch that out. I personally find it perfectly okay, but yes, of course you could put a nice mesh strap or a metal strap onto that. But I think it's for $130 automatic watch, very attractive. It's about 25 to 15 seconds is what they say is the accuracy, so it's moderate. It does 21,600 beats an hour, so you measure the speed of the beat of the wheel inside as, if you like, this jitter that you have on the second hand going round here. The faster the beats per hour, then the smoother that hand will look. And on very high speed beats per second, it almost looks smooth like a quartz watch. But this speed is in the middle. I've got some automatic watches which beat even slower than that and have a somewhat lower accuracy. But for me, whether it's losing 25 seconds a day or not isn't so critical. I'm constantly 2 or 3 times a week checking the time on the watch. So that's the Bambino, the white model. I like them so much. I got 2 of them. So this one is exactly the same movement. I think these are the 21 jewel models. This one I wear with a dinner jacket or something. Everyone says, oh, that's a nice watch. And they think it's something very expensive because they don't recognize the brand there and not realizing it's only $130. But really that's an attractive, I think, dress watch with it's gold plated, very thinly gold plated, but it really looks nice. And it was not, this one was almost the same price as the other. Now I got these from a place called Duty Island in Hong Kong, and I did a lot of research about people who commented on it, and they said it's all perfectly legit, very good. So I thought I'll try it, and I got these 2 watches. And they save money by not sending it in a box, but in a little pouch, in a padded pack, and that's how they came, and they were perfectly fine and everything worked, and I think I paid no shipping on it. So that I will put in a link down below, and there's a lot of other watches like this that you can get from that particular company. Now just moving on to the up end, if you like, of Orient. They have an upper end model called Orient Star, so they have a whole series of nice watches like this one, which are somewhat more expensive but very clearly superior. This has an automatic movement, 40A50. It has a 40-hour power reserve, just like the Bambino, but on the top dial you see how much power reserve you've got. In other words, if I wind this watch up to charge it. The needle on the top will move around the dial as you see it is now. That top needle is moving around and I'm charging up basically the spring, you know. I'm winding up the spring and it tells me how many hours I've got. So that is quite useful. It has also a day dial here, and this one here is a date dial. That's a little harder to read, but it's a very attractive model, I think. It's called the retrograde, and it really is, I think, snazzy, I would call that in old or 1970s English. That's a very attractive polished stainless steel watch. It has a very nice high quality bracelet with these links and going into the lug here, and it has a much higher accuracy because this is a better movement that they put into it. This is 4 seconds a day accurate, so that's clearly a higher standard, and this has 100 meters water depth. Now that is something you could theoretically go swimming with. I would never take a beautiful watch like this into a swimming pool or into the sea, but in principle it has decent protection. It has sapphire glass, so with the Bambino it was what they call the mineral glass. In this case it's the sapphire glass, which is very scratch resistant. With these two you will pick up scratches and notice it over time. I don't wear any individual watch so often because I've got 20 of them. That's one reason I got a nice selection of them. With this one it's protected, and on both sides, because this one has a nice glass back. To do this justice, I could even just do a review on each and every watch, but that would take me forever. But it has a nice sapphire glass back there, and you see the wheel, which, so every time you move this, it jiggles around and basically winds up the spring. That's how automatics work, and really looks beautiful, I think. That's one of the watches when I'm dressed up, I would consider to choose that one. So that's why I have so many watches, is I like to have a choice depending on what I'm wearing and what's going on. Right, so that's the Orient Star. It's a little thicker, this model, about 14 millimeters thick, so it sits up a little bit. That doesn't bother me, but some people like a thinner watch, and this is about 1.5 millimeters thinner, the Bambino. So it always depends what your preferences are. So moving on to the Orient Blue Ray. This one is the one I was wearing up till tomorrow, and this is a kind of homage watch on what you would have seen years ago and still today from Rolex. So a lot of Rolex patents that have expired, and many companies of course came along with their own version, if you like, of a Submariner. That would have been the Rolex version of this, but it's not a fake or anything, because it's not branded anywhere to be Rolex. It's got clearly the Orient brand on it. It's not infringing any current patents. And this watch you could definitely go swimming with. This has got a 200 meter depth, so that would be up to it. I tend never to swim with my watches, but you could. It's got a lovely lume dial with a lot of luminous paint used on the hands and the markers. So at the night, this one really is easy to look at and glance at and know what the time is. If I take, for example, the Orient Star here, that's got a much more sort of subtle loom coverage on the hands and the points. You can see it all right, but it's much easier with the Blu-ray model here, with a diver's watch basically, and that's why it has a bezel, so a diver could do settings and work out his decompression and things like that. I mean, I don't go diving, so I just got it for the look. But that's really a lovely watch. That's got an Orient F6972 movement in it. It's 22 joule. It's got a 40-hour power reserve, just like the Orient Star model we looked at. This one does 21,600 beats per hour. So it's not as accurate perhaps as this one, which was 28,800 beats per hour. And the accuracy is probably around more like 10 seconds on the day, plus or minus. But as I said, for me, you know, that's neither here nor there. I don't plan my day to an accuracy of 10 seconds. So this one I got from Creation Watches, another of those Orient type companies that offers very good prices. I got it for about $150. So an automatic watch for $150, that's amazing, I think. I mean, you're really getting a lot of quality. The bracelet has a nice quality. It's not as good as the Orient Star, but it's perfectly respectable. And I haven't changed it out because I still find this is perfectly nice. Somebody has made a comment I saw recently. You can even get these on Amazon now for around 130 on the American market. So that for a nice solid, very, very, very good. I mean, these will last you at least 10 years, if not longer, and looks absolutely beautiful. And you see that dial? That's the sunburst blue on the dial, and in real sunlight, not lamplight that I have here, that looks spectacular, that blue. And there are several models similar to this, like the Mako, for example, from Orient, which is, some people prefer that, but I think this one is absolutely glorious. I will do a loom test at the end of the video just to give you a feeling of what the difference is between these three watches, which all have loom. The Bambinos don't have luminous paint on them, so that's one disadvantage. You can't look at them in the night and see what the time is, and maybe is another reason that they're a little less expensive, but because the loom requires often many coats of paint to be effective. But we'll have a look and compare them as at the end of the video. This case, Phoibos, I love this green dial. Again, it's got the same sunburst on it as you move it around in the light. It's got this lovely Phoibos octopus logo, lots of loom, very easy to read. It's even more Rolex-like with that hour hand, if you like, is exactly what would come on a Submariner. The amazing thing is the movement is a Miyota 9015 Japanese movement in this Chinese watch. So this one has a little bit of Japanese in it as well. Its accuracy is the best of all of these watches you see here in this set, 2.5 seconds a day. It also has the best diving depth of 300 meters. It has 24 joules, so it has a couple more joules in the movement compared to the others. And it has a pretty high grade of luminous paint. It's Super Luminova C1, which is definitely above average. Let's see if we see that in the test I'll do. And this is just absolutely a gorgeous watch as well. Very nice strap, again, at least as good as the Orient quality. There's the logo on the back. You know, it's eye-catching, and a lot of people, when they've seen me wear this, I wear this in summer, you know, that fits for me very nice as a summer watch. They asked me, where do you get that? I bet that was expensive. Well, of course, I got this for about $300 a couple of 2.5 years ago, when they were a little less expensive because Phoibos was still making its name. If you try and buy it today, I think it's at least $400. So the Chinese are making now really quality watches with a little bit touch of their own design and thought in it, at the quality end of the spectrum. So it's not just inexpensive watches that come from China. And there are several brands now out there which are wholly Chinese owned and are designing really watches that are not copied from anybody and making really nice quality watches. So I'll give you one additional example here as I come to the last part of this video, which is this one. I like retro watches. So this is a Chinese MiG pilot watch from 1963. At that time, Chinese Air Force realized that they needed an accurate watch, and they didn't really have the know-how or the skills to produce it all those years ago. So a lot of Swiss companies were actually folding and closing at that point, as the beginning of quartz watches and low price watches were coming from Japan. There was a company called Venus who basically sold a lot of their patents and some of their equipment both to China and to Russia, because in both cases their military said, we want to build a decent watch for our officers, and in particular in this case for the Air Force in China. So this is a Venus 150 column wheel movement. Now Seagull, the company that makes this today, who was long time making all the parts for the copy watches, has become a producer in its own right, as I've said, and they have taken that basic movement and actually improved on a number of things. So I think this watch looks totally cool, really beautiful. It's actually so coveted today that this would cost you about €290. I just looked it up. I will again put a link down for this one. Got a glass back, so this is actually sapphire glass, where you can see the mechanism, which looks really marvelous. 1963, you see it stamped there. And I even, with my deal, got this lovely Milan bracelet watch strap, which I just love these watch straps. I got this from a guy called Julian Kaufmann at Poljot.de. So he's in Germany, and he imports a great many Russian watches, but also quite a few of these Chinese watches, and that's how I got this model. There were some earlier ones made, I think, by other, if you like, other handlers who were connected to this Tianjin factory, which is now owned by Seagull. But the Seagull one is recognized, even though it came later and is not quite identical to the original watch from the Air Force model. Everyone says that's still the best model because they've refined and improved some of the internal parts, and they are very expert now with their capabilities of making quality watches. This is one of the few wind-up watches. So this is not an automatic. This is a manual watch, like my granddad used to have. So you see now the second hand is going around, and of course a pilot sometimes would want to time things. So you have a little stopwatch here in addition, and you can time, if you like, larger periods on this second dial here. I don't use that very often, but basically that's what that's for. It just looks for me so beautifully retro. It sits up rather high, so it's something of a thick watch. I got the smaller model, the 37mm width. I don't like the watches that are very wide, but there is a wider, larger model. You can also have 42mm. It's 13mm thick, so it sits up quite a bit on your wrist, but I think that makes it look very distinctive. It's got a Seagull ST19 movement. The power reserve is 40 hours, like all the others, and it's 21,600 beats an hour. So it's not the highest, but it's in the middle, fairly accurate, probably do about 10 seconds a day. 21 joules. And it's really a nice watch to wear. It's more casual, smart casual, sort of, go to a party and people ask you, well, that's nice. And once you get used to actually winding these up once a day, you just do it before you go to bed, and that's it, which is not too easy, too difficult to remember. So the last one, I'll only just give it a cursory mention because this is one of the very few quartz watches I have. I like automatics, and occasionally I'll take a manual watch if I think there's something special. So I've got a couple of those, or my pocket watches, for example, and I've only really got 2 or 3 of these quartz watches. The advantage of a quartz watch is you don't have to reset and wind it up and all of that. Now this one, there's a trick, if you like, when you are storing quartz watches. If you pull this out, it will actually disconnect the battery and it won't be drained in storage. And because I tend to store watches a fair amount of time, you can only wear one at a time. That's what I do. If I now close this, you will see the second disc here is going around, so that's reconnected the battery. So that might be a nice little tip for you, people who get fed up of buying new batteries, if you don't just wear the same watch every day. As I said, the advantage is if they are set and day after day and you're wearing it for 2 weeks, you don't have to make sure you're wearing it in bed to keep the automatic winder working. You can just put it on the side in the morning it'll be, won't have to wind it up at all. Well, this is Donna Karan. This is what they call a fashion watch, and I've got this is the only one I've got, and my wife got me this once. There was a deal at Fossil, so Fossil got a license from Donna Karan to make this watch, and this line at Fossil they're all made in China, of course. And I actually wear this quite rarely, and if so, only for very casual purposes. So it's not my favourite, as you imagine. It's 5 atmospheres, 50 metres, which means I wouldn't chance it in the swimming pool. It's also quite a large, clunky watch, which is not really my style. Right, this is the lume test. I've exposed these 4 lume-coated watches now to the lamp for about a quarter of an hour. So on the left you have the Orient Star. The blue one, of course, is the Blu-ray Orient. Then you have the green dial Phoibos from the Chinese watch. And on the right, just for fun, I put in the Donna Karan fashion watch, which has a little bit of lume. Right. So on the left you see the Orient Star, very clear but small, of course. As I said, it's very, very lightly or very narrowly painted, and the dots are small. In the middle, very impressive, is the Blu-ray, which actually I think has the clearest picture, and that's my experience of wearing it in bed at night. And the next one along is the Phoibos, the Chinese watch. You can see the hour hand there with that sort of Rolex style to it. It's not bad, but slightly disappointed, as that's the C1 Superluminova. Obviously the Orient Blu-ray is superior, and I'm afraid the Donna Karan on the right, you can't even see it. Okay, so that's my Oriental collection of 7 watches. I hope you found it interesting. There will be a number of links below if you wish to explore those further, and my next one will be addressing my Russian watches, and I have a couple of American watches which I'd like to show you, so that will be the next set. Thanks everyone for watching, and take care.